The ideas in this video come from a track called Coming Off Autumn, which you can hear on my album Days of Sun and Days of Rain. First of all, I want to talk about developing a melody. It's easy enough to write a short melodic phrase. We can all doodle a few notes on a keyboard or whistle or hum a snatch of melody, but where do we go from here? How do we develop the tune in a coherent way? If we look at the opening track, I can explain some of my approaches. Let's have a listen. Here's the opening phrase of 6 notes. I then repeat this phrase with a bit of variation at the end. Now third time, with yet more variation at the end of the phrase. That time I made it a bit shorter. And now a new musical idea. And then it descends. And then we repeat that 3 C's idea followed by the descent. A little bit of variation there. And a third idea where we alternate a G sharp and an A. More rapid alternation. And then we round the idea off. The melodies are drawn from the notes of a D Mixolydian scale, slightly altered by adding a G sharp to give a bit of spice. The next issue I want to address concerns how you bring 2 melodies together. In some styles of music, one line will simply harmonise another, or you may have 2 lines in which both conform to restraints imposed by an underpinning chord sequence. In this section of this song, these are not considerations. We take another approach. There are 2 melodic lines in this section. Both use notes from the same scale, but I don't think about possible harmonic clashes or dissonances to be problems to be avoided. And the fact that they both draw from the same set of scale tones will mean that dissonance will not be a major problem anyway. But it is important that the 2 independent lines do not get in each other's way. So I do 2 things. The first is to ensure that rhythmically they're not fighting for the same space. So you'll notice that when one line is busy, the other is more passive, and vice versa. The other consideration is to ensure that both are good, strong melodies, capable of holding the listener's attention. So you should find that as you listen to this section, your attention may move between the lines, but that both are complete melodies in themselves. The 2 synth parts, commencing bar 13, are 2 further instances of the above principle. These synthesizer parts are actually melodies, which are moving at a much slower pace. Again, notes come from the same scale, and again the emphasis is on melody, not harmony. However, I do listen carefully to the marimba melodies playing above, so that the synth parts sound good against these. Let your ears be the judge, as they say. So the synths are slow-moving melodies, nothing happens in a hurry, so we perceive them perhaps more as textures rather than tunes. I'll now play a section and you can follow the display on the MIDI roll shown at the bottom of the screen. here comes the second synth. At bar 43, I introduce a guitar melody. This is built of four 4-bar phrases which have a folk song-like quality. So I'm using a traditional idea here. Even when we are working in a contemporary idiom, we can still make use of older ways of working. So phrase 1 is the opening 4 bars. Phrase 2, a development. Phrase 3, contrasting idea. Repeated 2-bar phrase, in fact. And phrase 4, a falling conclusion coming to rest on the keynote of D. From 59 to 64, we have an instance of something I mentioned before, old ideas fading out as new ideas fade in. In this case, the guitar melody fades out as we introduce a new bass ostinato idea. This overlap makes for a smooth, effective transition. Finally, here is an idea which has probably been around for a long time, but really comes into its own when working in digital frameworks like Ableton Live. It makes use of something I call the what-if principle. In this case, I ask myself, what if I copy a MIDI part from the marimba over to a synth line? I've nothing to lose by trying it, and I can always undo if it doesn't work, but in this case it does. Around bar 80, I copy from the marimba across to the synth. Let's hear how the marimba tune now sounds on the synth. So, from my commentaries on this piece, we can begin to round up a few musical principles which can be taken into your own Ableton projects, regardless of genre. First, I talked about developing a melody. This is easiest to achieve if you think in terms of phrase lengths of say 2 or 4 bars. My first phrase is 2 bars long, and I repeat this phrase a couple of times with some slight variation. A new 2-bar idea is then introduced, which is also repeated with variation. So repetition with variation is one good way to start developing a melody. Second principle, 2 independent melodies can work together if they are both strong, interesting tunes, and they don't fight with one another over rhythmic space. When one is busy, the other can be relaxing a bit. Slow-moving, sustained synth melodies can provide effective accompaniment parts. 4. Think back to the guitar melody. Think in terms of traditional songwriting, be it folk songs or pop songs. 4 phrases of equal length, where there is usually some repetition of ideas. Number 5. Overlap for smooth transitions. Have new ideas come in as old ideas fade out. And finally, Copying MIDI clips from one instrument to another is another way of easily creating more material without always trying to come up with new ideas. There can be strength in unity, where the bulk of material is created from the germ of just a few ideas. Again, this is a principle which has been used by composers for centuries. I hope you've enjoyed this video and find it useful. You can hear the full track by following the links given below the video. And as always, constructive comments are always most welcome.